This is the walkthrough for the Avin USA 10.25-inch display add-in, in this case in a BMW F32 4 Series. My display has been in for about a week. I feel like I'm in a place where I can walk through all the features and functions now that they're set up properly, including one that I still haven't been able to get yet, but I think that's actually more me and my phone than it is the display. The plan will be to walk through each function throughout the display, and then also the deeper settings for Android themselves, so you can see how that works. I also want to include the admin password and deeper into the admin settings, because there's a couple of things there you need to make sure that are right so your integration into the original iDrive functionality will work properly. All right, let's go out to the car and check it out. Okay, here we are in the car, and again, this example is a 2014 F32 or 435. This is the top display for the new screen and Android system. As you can see, it mimics the iDrive 5 layout of tiles, including a series on the left and the right. Now, at times you'll see me use the iDrive controller, at times you'll see me use the touchscreen. One of the big advantages of this is it is a touchscreen and it does work very, very well and is very responsive. The very first tile you'll see is the music tile. This is for playing integrated music files, so you could load on a series of MP3s, other files that you'd like into the player, and it has a native player. It comes with a sample file that you can see playing here. The iDrive controls work as you can cycle through it. In this case, I'm going to hit back on my iDrive controller to go back to the main screen. That is something where you can load in additional files, including there is an SD card reader on this back corner right here, and you pull the cover off, and you can slide in an SD card to increase the storage in the device. Bluetooth. You have full Bluetooth integration where you can play both music and handle calls through the system. This is a functionality that I personally don't use very much other than to stream music. I found it's worked pretty well thus far. Set up your phone through Bluetooth integration, depending on what kind of phone you have. The next is the navigation. So this is a Cigic. It is the Cigic app for navigation. You can download maps. You can do all kinds of other setup. For me, it's worked very, very well. My antenna, like I showed in the install video, is inside of the dash on the right of the display using the adhesive and is up against the top of the dash. So I haven't had any issues with GPS resolution. I've chosen to download maps for my region. So just in case I'm offline or something similar, there aren't any issues there. Being able to run maps offline is actually a bit of an advantage, candidly, and it's one that I personally kind of like. Now, in this case, you're going to have to use touch controls, as you can see here, pinch to rotate and turn and so on, to use your controls. It is an advantage or disadvantage. So if in your iDrive system, like I do with my native iDrive system, I have navigation. So the iDrive controls to scroll in and out work in the native. The scroll in this case of spinning my iDrive controller doesn't work. Now, hitting back or left on your iDrive controller will prompt you to exit. But in this case, that roll in, roll out ability from the iDrive controller you don't have in that view. I don't necessarily see it as that much of a problem. It's just something to note that if you have native navigation in your original iDrive system, I'm willing to trade a bit of an advantage and disadvantage there. The advantage I see in this case, not only do you have touchscreen and be able to maneuver around as you see me here in the Pacific Northwest of the state of Washington, but you end up not having to pay for the updates from BMW for navigation twice a year. If you're getting that from the dealership, that's a ton of money. So I'm willing to trade off that functionality a little bit. It works well for me. All right, so let's go back out of navigation. Oh, before we do that, I want to note something here really quickly. You hit the little hash marks right here in the corner, which I will hit. There we go. As you'll see in settings right here, you can go into your settings and change how your region is set out, how your measurements are set out. I had a question on the YouTube channel about it was still set to kilometers and different settings. In here, I changed my distance units to miles and feet. I changed my time format, changed my language. So if you do need to change it, this is just simply going to the settings of CIGIC itself to change how those settings work in your navigation. Hopefully that makes more sense and answers the question that I got from a YouTube viewer. All right, so let's exit out of navigation. So DVD. Now, as I spoke to earlier, there's some functions that I'm not going to be able to demonstrate yet because I don't have them. DVD in this case refers to being able to add in a secondary DVD player. Now, I definitely could see some advantages to this. So right at the moment, this isn't something I can demonstrate simply because that device doesn't exist yet. Avin USA is looking at adding an additional module, adding that player. So if you did want to connect that, you could stream DVDs. Right at the moment, I can't demonstrate it. So moving on, moving left to right, we look at original car. This is how you get into your original iDrive functionality. So like I said, in my case, and as I go backwards here to get back to the root of what is my iDrive 4, essentially, you can see all of the original navigation is here. Connected drive, vehicle information, navigation, the office, telephone, radio, multimedia, and so on. So all the functionality, so if you've got this functionality in your car to start with, you'll still have it here. This is how you get to it. All of the additional functionalities in the display add over the top or add to what your original car would have. Like I said, in regards to navigation, it allows you to have updated navigation without having to pay BMW for it. It's a different system, but I really see an advantage there. Some of my initial questions as I added this system was how would I get to this original information? For example, the important things around vehicle settings, sport displays, vehicle status. I mean, these are things I was not willing to lose and really was kind of concerned about. For example, as we look at TPM and so on, tire pressure monitoring. I'm like, well, when I have all this integrated technology already, I'm not willing to lose that. So let's not lose that. So as we look at this, one thing I want to point out, if you notice when I touch the screen, it takes us back to that high level, the new UI, right? So as this is a touch screen, all the touch screen functionality will work for you. But if you go back into the original car, your iDrive 4, your iDrive 5, or earlier system, this you're going to be completely dependent on the iDrive controller. This doesn't have the ability to add touchscreen functionality to your original displays. So you're not losing anything there, but you're not gaining anything there either. And if you do touch the screen, so you're here, we're in original displays, let's go into settings, for example. Here we are in the settings. This will take us back to that top level display. Now again, at times you'll see me using the iDrive controller, or you'll see me using it because of my hands on up here on the screen. All right, so that's the original car. So we can go through and we get into all of our original settings here, and you can see how those things work just fine. Radio also as well in this case. This is where your original radio functionality will be as I go back and back and back and back. So the next tile over from original car is radio. So these are all your original car functionality for your radio feature, your memory buttons on your dash, all of those things. You can still get to these just as normal. You can have your side display set up, which we can get to, and have the split screen just like you normally do. All those things that you would normally have in your original display are still here, still available, and will still work. So it's just a matter of getting to them. So like I said, you can get to that through the original car or radio, and it seems to work pretty well. Now, one thing I want to note about the original car while I'm here. I have two outstanding questions right now with Avin USA that I need to get resolved. One is the car mirror, which I'll get to in a few minutes, which is another function that we get to over here. And the other one is about my backup camera. So I have the integrated backup camera here in my car, including front and rear radar and original backup camera. When I put my car in reverse, if I'm in the original car display, I will get my backup camera. Now, I want to stress that actually this is where this display is a huge advantage. I went from the 8.8-inch display of the original equipment to this display, which is 10.25. So not only is it a little bit bigger, but it is a much higher resolution screen. So I actually find that my backup camera is a better tool with this in place. Now, my backup camera will flip in and out normally as I would expect it to if I'm in the original car. So as I go back here, if I'm here, or I know I'm going to back up, I'll flip it into original car so I can see my backup camera. What does not happen right now is that if I'm in this UI, if I'm in the top level UI and I put it in reverse, it will not automatically cut over to my backup camera. That's an outstanding question I have with Tommy of Avin. It's something that we should be able to get to work. And again, in my case, I haven't been able to, and I'm a little unclear why. As I figure that out, and when I figure that out, I'll provide an update to this video so you guys can figure it out as well. For now, I always know that if I'm going to switch over, I make sure I'm in the radio UI or the original car UI, or take that either one of those options, because that is the original iDrive UI, and I can see my backup camera. I'll hear the radar beeps, all the good stuff. So I just really want to make sure to point that out, especially as a safety feature. Don't lose that. And again, this is with original manufacturing equipment, or original equipment for the backup camera, and is not the add-in that you can get from Tommy. That add-in will be plugged in a different way, and that cutover will work. This is using original equipment. So again, radio. And I'll deal with the other controls as we get across top. We've got a home button, which will take us back to here. We've got an indication showing both, let me zoom in, showing both Wi-Fi, Bluetooth. This will make the screen go dark, which is actually kind of a nice feature to have at night. This will show you, like Android, will show you all the applications that are currently running, which you can either switch to or close. So it's an application switcher, your time, and a back arrow like you would on just about any Android device. So those are just kind of your basic Android controls as we go through this. Switching to the next screen over, we have video. Now, just like we had with the music tile on the first screen, the video tile as well is for video files that you've moved to the device, whether it's on an SD card that you can put in the slot here on the side, or whether you've copied them to the native storage on the device. Comes with a sample file. Perhaps they're trying to inspire us. It's a sample file from Fast and Furious. So maybe they're trying to inspire us on how to drive. We'll see. Okay, but this will play, and you can browse through and you can look at the native files that you have, and you can play whatever files you'd like to have. Obviously, there's some safety issues about sitting there watching movies while driving. I'm not going to address that, but keep it in mind. Be safe. Don't be stupid. And a screen this size, keep in mind law enforcement will probably see it if you're sitting there watching a movie. Just something to keep in mind. Moving forward, DVR. This would be for a forward-facing camera. Now, it says no signal right now because I don't have a forward-facing camera installed. But this is where you would install it and you can get straight to it. Now, in a previous car and a previous product from Avin, I did have the forward-facing camera. It was a lot of fun. I did some club racing days in my M3. It was really fun to have that forward-facing camera natively built in. Dumped it off to an expansion card. It was really a lot of fun. I'm going to come back to settings, this next tile over, because we're going to spend some time there. Dashboard is a very simple dashboard screen showing your speed. We'll actually show you some basic things like, for example, your parking brake is engaged, your temperature, how much fuel you have left, whether you have your seatbelt on or not, and your RPMs at the time. It's not a screen I use very much. That's okay. It's a nice screen. The question I have out to Tommy at the moment, and Tommy and Avin, is if it's possible to change this screen. Because for the US market, it's in kilometers, it's in liters, it's in Celsius. It would be nice if we could flip this to US measurements, but I can certainly understand being an international company with a lot of different options, and most of the world doesn't use that settings. It's not a default to begin with. I'm okay with that. Coming back, phone link. Let's talk about phone link for a moment. So this is the Android mirror. You can also do it with an iPhone. I am not an iPhone user, I'm an Android user, so I would be using the Android. As I noted in the intro video, this is something I haven't been able to get to work yet. I think this is more a factor of me and my phone than it is the display. I've spoken with Avin about it extensively. They have numerous customers that have been able to use this phone link mirror ability, and I haven't been able to. So I think that's more a factor of me than anything else. That's another thing that I'll come back to and demonstrate once I have the opportunity to do so, once I have it up and working. I understand a lot of people find this as a very useful function to be able to mirror your phone. So again, if you wanted to stream something, whether you were streaming navigation, movies, whatever it is you wanted to do, that is a good way to do it. The last tile in this main UI is apps. You press that, and this will actually take you to the native Android icon display. So for the Android users, this will take you directly to your display where you can go to Android Play. You can download other applications. This is where you can install additional things beyond what comes default. So you can see the Android Play Store here where you would want to run this, update any maps, update any of the subcomponents. I recommend doing that fairly often. Android seems to update applications and things quite often. So also, as I noted up here in the UI, where I've got Wi-Fi connected, this is how you would do it. You'd connect your device to your Wi-Fi or either here at home or off your hotspot off your phone. Then you could do all the updates that you need to do. I'll come back to that in a minute once we get into the Android settings themselves and how you set some of those things up. So let's go back home and let's come back to settings. This is going to be a very important thing for you. So settings. This looks like, in my case, the iDrive 4 UI. So they've done a good job in mirroring or copying the settings to look like the iDrive 4. But this is still native to the application. This is still that top level of the display. So the touchscreen actually works here, even though it looks like the iDrive 4. So just don't mistake the two. Now I'm going to use my iDrive controller so my hand doesn't get in the way. So navigation. This is where Avin provides the Cigic navigation application. This is where I installed it, and this is where I selected it, so it selects the Cigic. If you want to use something else, you certainly have that ability to change it if you have an application that you prefer to use instead. The former Nokia Here, now called Here We Go, is pretty good, and I use that in a lot of occasions on my phone and other places. In this case, we have the Cigic app, which seems to work okay. So let me back up. Going from top to bottom, language. So we have two different options for Chinese, and we have an option for English. In this case, we've set to English. Now, if there's going to be additional languages or things added, I'd definitely communicate with Tommy if you're a customer that would like different languages than what are provided by default. I don't know what the possibility of that is, but I would certainly communicate with him that if you wanted a different native language on your device. Time. Now, let's talk about time here for a second. I've had some initial setup when I was doing this where my time didn't seem to want to stick. And even right now, it's off. So if you look up in the corner, and I'll gently zoom in, it says it's 10:30. That would be 10:30 a.m. And it's actually currently 11:30 a.m., plus or minus a little bit. So I have my time set to auto sync on the GPS. You can also set it manually, which in this case, I'm going to correct it and set it manually. Now, I have noticed a little bit of switch here because yesterday I did have the time set correctly and it wasn't an issue. So I think that this is perhaps a little bit of settings conversation between this top layer of how that's set and deeper into Android. And I'm not sure that the two of them are speaking together perfectly, but in my case, I'm just going to flip it to manual. And so that'll prevent that problem from happening again. So audio. These are your basic audio settings for setting your default volumes coming out of the device. They're set to maximum. I've kept them there. Everything seems to be fine. So as we come down to system. Now system, we have our rear view mirror. We have the rear view camera type, which is where this is some of the settings that will have to do when you're with your backup camera. This is where I've got some ongoing conversation because, like I said, my backup camera will not cause the primary top level of the display to flip over. If I'm in the original car or the radio, which is the iDrive 4 UI, it will flip to the backup camera. It won't if I'm at the top layer. I'm still working out these settings, and I'll update as I continue, as I indicated earlier. Once I get that update, once I get that worked, I'll definitely speak to it here, and I'll advise on what are the best settings. So let's back up. Okay, so let's go back into settings. Okay, so factory. This is going to be an important thing for you. So everybody should have the factory passcode, which is 1314. So we put in 1314 and hit OK. Now, these settings are very, very important. One of them in particular, and so I'll start from the top to bottom as I go through them. Now, in my case, I have the HK system here in my car, so I set the host settings to Harman instead of Alpine. It's my understanding that if you don't have the HK system, your head unit is Alpine. When you're installing this, and if you follow my install video, you'll have the head unit of your stereo system out briefly. You should see the sticker on the top of it that says whether it's an Alpine or Harman. In my case with the Harman Kardon system here in my F32, mine's set to Harman. Now, the DVD selection, it doesn't really matter what I set yet because, again, the device is not plugged in an extra. Same thing goes for the DVD set, and this is where you can tell it on whether or not it'll play video while you're moving. Again, I'm not going to speak to the safety implications of that. That's entirely up to you. You can set your logo of when it starts. Because this goes across multiple designs, you will see some additional manufacturers here: Audi, Mazda, and a couple of different BMW logos. Myself, I took the BMW Roundel logo to start. You can update. You can go through and you can update APKs, which are application packs for Android. This is a place where you can support and install those APKs. But most importantly, out of all of these things, the second most important is setting your CD host settings properly. CAN type. This is our guy right here. Now, I've already made the suggestions, of course, that these variables be in English. Again, dealing with international customers and people all over the world, English is not always going to be the default when you're dealing with an international product. I understand that. I respect that. As you look at this, you can see that there are 5 different choices for the CAN bus selection for your car. Now, when the device initially came up, when I was in the original car or radio sections, I got a tremendous amount of screen distortion and a very odd little sub-panel window that fell over this side. And for the life of me, I couldn't figure out where that was coming from or why we had so much screen distortion. So when you look at these variables, you can actually tell that these are CAN bus selections for different models of car. 2016 X1, 2 different models of E60, a 2012 5 Series, and 2011 X3 of one kind, and a 2011 X3 of another kind. So in my case, my original setting was set for the 2016 X1. And again, I'm in a 2014 F32. So I went through all of the selections to see if these would change that original car behavior. For me, the 2011 X3 corrected that display, and then my original car and my radio display no longer had distortion and no longer had that little window overlay coming out of the device, and everything looked perfectly. So it's one of those things where this is super important that you get into. The last selection here is also where you can add a large batch file of APKs. So for example, for the people who really want to modify their deck and change the applications that are on their Android-based system, this is a way that you could add a whole batch file of APKs through an SD card installed in the side or something similar to get those things done. But in this factory setting, up here at the top, the ARM setting, setting your correct deck, and your CAN type, setting the correct CAN type is going to be very, very important. I would suggest that if you have a different model or year than my car, and if you're getting some display issues, try every single option. You're not going to hurt anything. Just find the one that works properly for you. Like I mentioned earlier, I passed on suggestions to Tommy and Avin USA that these options be updated, either if we have different vehicles and that type, but also into English to make sure that that works. So it's a little less confusing and that works a little bit better. He said it's something that they're working on. So let me back out of this. So we're back to the original settings, and again, that was factory. Now when you select more settings, this is actually the native Android settings UI for this version of Android, and this is an Android 4.4. So out of all of these settings, the most important to me are Wi-Fi, because then you can be connected. Now you can see I'm connected here to my home Wi-Fi. It allows me to run any updates and run anything else like that. You can also hotspot it off your phone. You can get into sound, display, screenshots. You can look at how much your storage and what apps you have installed. Your location settings, security, language, which you can actually go into your language settings, whether you have spell checker, what keyboard you use, because at times you will have a keyboard that you'll use for entering information like email addresses, things like that. You can set it up to backup, which I do. In my case, I've got it set to backup. You can also set up an account on which account you would like to use. In my case, I've got a Google account, so I've got it synced, so the Google Play Store or the Android Play Store will work. But also, as we look here at the bottom, we get into date time. So my date time in this case, as I mentioned with the date time up here in the corner, my date time is set to update automatically based off of my network provided protocols. My suspicion is, because all of this information is correct, the time is correct, date is correct, time zone is correct, that there may be two different settings. There's this deeper Android setting, and there's that top level time setting. And I'm not sure at times, I think they may disagree a little bit, which is why you get that update where it was right, then it's not, then it's right, then it's not. I found in my case, if I set the time to manual, it works just fine. One remaining question, and this may have to do with the mirror link, which I haven't been able to get working yet. If you look at developer options, it prompts me for a password. I don't have that password. So I'm going to continue to talk with Tommy and Avin USA to get that password information to make sure that this is all set up properly. And I think that may be the root of the problem I'm having with my phone and being able to set up the mirror link. The last option here is about the device, which will just give you some basic information about what's going on with Android. Pretty typical things for Android 4.4. So let's head back and we'll go here to system info. And this again gives you basic information about your system information coming out of the system itself. Shows you how much memory you're using, how much memory is on board, the build of the OS, and so on. This is more informational than anything else. Okay, so we take us back. Here we are back to the main UI. We've covered settings, dashboard, phone link, and apps. And let's flip back over and we go through this we'll make sure we've covered everything. Again, left to right, music, Bluetooth, navigation, DVD, original car and radio, video, DVR, settings, dashboard, phone link, and apps. Now, I do want to add one thing as an update to my installation video. I added a 3.5 millimeter extension cord off of the wiring harness, and I routed it through the glove box. There actually are small vent holes in the ceiling of the glove box, so it's very easy when you have all of this trim out that you can route that cabling down so I can plug in other devices. Same thing goes for a USB connection as well, because there is a USB port on the wiring harness. I routed that through the vent holes in the dash, or through the inside of the dash to the glove box. So I can connect anything that I want to do. The cables that are long enough, I can extend them out of the glove box, or I could plug in a device, put it in the glove box, and close it. So that would give me the ability to not only stream additional things, I could attach my phone, I can even charge my phone that way. Or if I'm in the original car settings, which we'll go back to here, you can see the auxiliary connection here as well. I can use this auxiliary connection to the original device through that connection. So in my case, I've got a USB and auxiliary connection under my armrest. This gives me the ability to use a different setup as well. So that works very well for me. So all of your original functionality will work in your top level UI, and will also work through this level. So there's a few things, like I said, I still need to work out, but I thought it more important to get this display or get this up for the commentary of the setup for the display for people that have been asking. As I get those updates for both the DV player, for the mirror link, and for the backup camera, I'll make sure to share those things with the group as well to make sure that people understand and can get to use those functionality. Don't hesitate to ask any questions. I look forward to your comments on the channel, and thank you so much.